Welcome to the Sales Pulse podcast. I'm Marla Koupal, the Sales Conversation Architect. I help you create personalized conversations with the person in front of you so that you can create a buying space. Today, let's talk about why this attitude called get it done fails you when you're in a sales conversation. I call it the production mindset. I was sparked after reading a blog called Better versus Done. Seth Godin was talking about how it is we get excited to get things done, produced. All right, we got it off our desk. Our to-do list is less. We put another tick mark up on the sales board and we say next. However, if you recognize this behavior, you will realize that that's leaving you short. You're not making the sales that you'd like to make. Let's talk about having a cleaner sales conversation, a buyer with greater clarity, and a decision from the buyer that doesn't need pressure. They actually make choices that are beneficial for both of you. Let's get back to the production mindset, the one that ruins sales and sales conversations. Production mindset works in school, works in manufacturing, works in writing a book, works in whatever it is that you can truly put a project deadline around. But human conversations, they're not projects. Think about this. If you're trying to complete a sale, do you have the right goal in mind? Does completing a goal allow you to steward the buyer's thoughts, feelings, needs, and desires so that the buyer can walk themselves into their own purchase? Or do you sell like you're trying to get it done and this person is just going to become another notch on the board? Buyers feel that. What done selling looks like is the buyer will start sharing and you will start steering with directive questions. A buyer might say, I'm just exploring, and the seller hears, I have to convert this. There's a lot of space in between those two perspectives. A buyer says, I need to think about it, and the seller hears, I'm losing. When a seller starts doing what production-minded people do, they're trying to move the process forward. That's what you do when you squeeze a tube of toothpaste. You can't do that to buyers. Or they're trying to get something handled. I don't know about you, but I'll bet you personally don't want to be handled. So why are you using that as a sales technique? And some are trying to push and finish so they can get on to the next person. But maybe you'll lose them all if your whole behavior is that of pushing and hurrying. So don't try to land the plane before you have the airport. A production-minded seller can look disciplined, they can look organized, they can look consistent, but the buyer, if they feel managed, they're going to run away. You definitely will be ghosted. The buyers don't argue. They just start to retreat, choose to not fight with you when they feel pushed. They'll be polite, they'll get very vague, and they'll say things like, let me get back to you. They say things like, let me get back to you. Do a self-assessment. Okay, what did I miss? What have they said that I haven't answered? Are they going to leave me with a question unanswered? Those are the thoughts that should be going through your head, not will I lose the sale? Or if somebody says, I need to check my schedule, send me the information. Well, they're brushing you off, right? But you need to look in and say, okay, where do I need to shift? Where was I not present? How have I been pushing? And how do I pull back and save this conversation? Those phrases are not always stall tactics. They're time for self-assessment. Sometimes you just need to give the buyer time to regain their space in the conversation. You have to consider, have I been talking too much, sharing too much? How do I help them regroup and join the conversation again? Remember, buyers like to feel they are in control, so don't take it away from them. Be thankful that those buyers are willing to stick with you if you do regroup in your conversation, because they can help you save the sale that you're currently losing trying to get something done. The moment a buyer, any buyer, senses that you want to be done, they stop thinking out loud with you. You lose your access to that buyer's truth. The conversation is dead in the water. Some people hear this from me and feel that I threw the goals in the trash can, that I'm not working from goals. No, I have multiple goals. The goal is to find a buyer and then create the solution. Goals occur faster when you deal with the buyer and stay socially connected with them and their thoughts and allow them to talk out loud. Remember, goals are what a business needs to have in order to set some achievement possibilities. But if you're in the process of making that achievement happen, you have to have a different process than thinking about, can I be done? Can I go on to the next one? Those are conversation killers. When conversations don't happen, you want to ask yourself a question. Have I even created a buyer? Go into every conversation thinking I'm creating buyers. How does that happen? You have to put the goals for the business over here, and actually they do get achieved. And don't let the goal become the tone of the conversation, because the buyer will know that. So if I have a belief system, I'm staying here in this conversation until I hit my number, well, the buyer feels that. You don't have to say it out loud. It comes off of you in huge frequency vibrations. So your goals, when shifted to, let's find your fit. Let's find how this works into your needs and your desires. Instead of, let's get to yes, well, then you'll generate future conversations if you don't close in this conversation. You're looking to generate a consistency of a relationship and a relationship to the product or the service, and you want to move something forward continuously. You'd love to call them back and not be ghosted. Work from the space called Let's Find Your Fit. And that's not the default perspective in sales, but it is the one that works. I can watch multiple shorts and videos online, and they're all telling you how to push, push, push. Let's lose these outdated terms that you find in sales. Close the loop, overcome the objection, move on to the next step, get the commitment. When I read Seth's blog about It's Done, I realized that more and more people could be successful in sales if they shifted to better, a cleaner conversation, a clearer buyer, and a decision that doesn't need pressure. Better is a commitment to truth. Better selling sounds like this. I'm here to help you get clear, not just drag you to a yes. That's your thought. Have that in your mind. The best sales conversations don't create compliance. They create a buying space where the buyer says, here's what I want. Here's what I'm trying to solve. Here's what matters most. Here's what would make this decision easy. Those types of interactions never appear if you're pushing an agenda. Give your buyers room to think. The simplest shift you can make are these. Stop asking questions that are designed to advance your process. Start asking questions that advance the buyer's clarity. Instead of, are you ready to get started? Say, what would you need to feel confident either way for a yes or a no? Instead of, do you want the package or the membership? Try, what are you hoping this changes for you before you ask some of those closing questions? Instead of, let me explain why it's worth it, what part feels valuable to you and what part still feels unclear? Those questions do something powerful. They keep the buyer inside their own decision-making space. And that's where sales are made. So let's quickly cover persistence because everybody's throwing that at you too. You got to get persistence, and this is where salespeople still get confused. The persistence and production mindset says, I have to finish this. But if you're working from a better mindset, you're saying, I'm willing to continue this conversation later if this will help. And then you set a time to reconnect. Or all that means is you can be persistent without being pushy. You can follow up without being weird. You can stay engaged without chasing. Here's what better follow-up looks like. Open a conversation with, last time you said your biggest concern was X. Has anything changed since then? And then be quiet and let them tell you. Or you could say, where are you in your thinking right now? You told me you were going to research this. What has that added to your thoughts or your questions? Or what question do you wish you'd asked the last time that you didn't and you have in mind now? That's my favorite. I use it a lot, and it seems to move a lot of things very, very forward very quickly because they really know you're there for them. These are buying space questions. They're respectful, they're clear, they don't corner the buyer, they invite the buyer's truth. So don't quit too early, keep going, and do it gracefully. The competitive advantage for sellers are those who stay present with the buyer, stay curious about the buyer, and keep improving the conversation. They don't turn it into a push. Buyers can feel the difference if you're wearing energy that says, I need a sale. Here's your takeaway for today. If you're selling and you feel yourself getting tense, speeding up, explaining too much, trying to land that plane before it has any possibility of finding an airport, stop. Ask yourself, am I trying to be done or am I committed to being better? Better doesn't mean it's going to be a longer conversation. Better does mean it's going to be a clean conversation with lots of clarity on the buyer's part. And it also means it's safe for the buyer to think out loud. When buyers think out loud, they find their own reasons to say yes or no without you pushing them through the door. That's the Sales Pulse podcast for today. Subscribe on YouTube, Apple, or Spotify. And if this episode hit you, share it with someone who's selling with a good heart, but a production mindset, because this changes everything.